Hey, I'm Ilan Rubin. We're going to be diving into the session for Good Morning, Good Morning, my cover of the classic Beatles song. If you have not heard it yet, go listen to Sgt. Pepper's. If you've heard that and you haven't heard mine yet, go listen to that too. Before we actually get into the nuts and bolts of the song, here's a little bit about my cover and why I did it in the first place. Honestly, it was never meant to see the light of day. I found myself in the studio with nothing on the schedule, but I still wanted to experiment and have some fun. So I found the isolated tracks on YouTube. I learned them all, and I wanted to see how close I could get to recreating the vibe within the confines of this room. Now, for those of you who have heard the song, or my cover, and are watching this as a result of that, you may be surprised to know that I did not use an actual drum set, any live amps, nothing like that. Everything was done in this room. So I have a V-drum kit behind me that was feeding MIDI to Pro Tools. I used Native Instruments Abbey Road 60s drums to kind of just be in that time period and that vibe sonically. I used whatever guitars I had that were as close to whatever the Beatles were using. And then I used amplitude models of AC30s and the like, whatever was in that Beatles vibe. Vocals were done here, and we'll get into the overdubs and the brass stuff and what I did to compensate for that, because as of today, I don't play any brass instruments, but there's always time. So, fast forward to 2022, I've had a coffee collaboration come out with my fine friend David Kennedy from Angels and Airwaves. He's got an amazing coffee brand called James Coffee Go. We've talked about doing a collaborative blend, and I thought, hey, Good Morning blend. I've got a cover of Good Morning, Good Morning. Let's do that. James Coffee Co. is delicious. David's a great guy. But anyway, that's why the song is actually Sing the Light of Day now. So, recorded everything in this room. My brother Ilan Rubin mixed this and stuck with the Abbey Road theme. So I used as many Abbey Road themed, inspired licensed plugins as I could, whether it be from Waves, UAD, whatever it may be. And then he continued with that through the mixing phase. And like I said, the whole point was to see how close we could get to recreating that vibe. This is a committed session, so it's not going to sound identical, so please go and stream this afterwards so you can hear what the actual mix sounds like in all of its glory. Everything's committed. I'm missing some plugins. I've kind of rebalanced things for the purposes of this video. So yes, it certainly does sound better than this, but this is more about diving into each individual track and showing you how I built this up. So what's funny about this is that if you look at the session here, the whole track pretty much lives within right here. We've got some drums with some odd snare drum overdubs, this other bass drum. Then we have some bass, of course, rhythm guitar, lead vocal, harmonies, and backups. So pretty standard stuff. 4-piece rock band, this is what you'd have. But then we scroll down here, and all of these tracks are the brass parts. Now, as I said, I don't play any brass instruments, so what I did was, instead of finding a good sounding brass library and trying to just play the stuff, I just didn't feel that would sound very authentic. So what I did was I learned all of the parts, and for that I referenced this, which I lovingly refer to as the Bible. It's the Beatles Complete Scores. Has everything in it from everything they've ever recorded, every harmony, every instrument, everything. It's all there. I would learn the parts, and beware there are mistakes in there, so don't be afraid to use your ear if you have this book and occasionally you find something that just doesn't sound quite right. You might be right. So learn all the parts. Then what I did was I played them with fuzz guitars, and the pedal I used for that was by a company called Jex Teles. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it properly, but they have a pedal called the White Pedal, which is in homage to the White Album, and a distortion fuzz circuit that was a part of these solid-state Vox amps that were used around that time from, say, Sgt. Pepper through Magical Mystery Tour and the White Album. So I used that to just remain within the Beatles universe. And then I also pulled up a Mellotron plugin. I use Mtron Pro. And I then found the relevant tape banks to try to actually reproduce those parts and mix them in with the fuzz guitars. So it's enough rambling. Let's actually dive in and get through verse 1.
Nothing to do to save his life, call his wife in. Nothing to say but what a day, how's your boy been? Nothing to do, it's up to you. I've got nothing to say, but it's okay.
All right, so out the gate, there's a lot going on. It's hit with this sort of chorus, which isn't a traditional chorus as we know it. It's the good morning phrase. It's repeated over and over and over again. And in that short instance, we already have this quirky brass. We're coming out with the big backups, a very bizarre verse, and I'll elaborate as to why it's bizarre in just a second. We have the second part of the verse, or what may be a pre-chorus, and then we already loop back around to the good morning refrain. And as I said, a lot of information in just a few seconds, really. So here are the brass parts I was talking about that are done with the guitars. Those sound like this. Kind of funny sounding, especially without the music, but this is a series of double track parts that then make up this little brass ensemble. So, for example, we start with this. Then we add these. Next level. A bit more. So, the all fuzz guitars. Then when we scroll down here, I have the same brass arrangement, but done with Mellotron tape bakes, and those sound like this. Kind of fun, and then they blend to sound like the following. So the brassy quality comes across in the mid-range and high end of these instruments, but of course it's not actual brass, but it gets the point across. Then we find ourselves in this verse, which is truly bizarre because I'm going to play it for you. I'm going to open this book in the meantime, and if you know anything about time signatures, go ahead and count along to what you think is going on here.
Nothing to do to save his life, call his wife in. Nothing to say but what a day, how's your boy been?
All over the place, and the thing that makes it work is, of course, the great melody. And Lennon would often change time signatures, not necessarily on purpose, but he would either take beats out or add beats to add to the flow of his melody. Melody was king, and I personally agree with that. I'm not the biggest fan, per se, of having odd time signatures for the sake of it, because often it kind of throws a wrench in the groove. But in a scenario like this, it's flowing beautifully, and it's not until you start counting or maybe tapping your foot to it, you're like, wait, where's the one here? So if I'm consulting the Beatles' complete scores here, they're looking at it as a few bars of 5/4 and then a bar of 3/4. Now, if you were to add up that amount of time in quarter notes, I'm sure that adds up. I'm not going to bother. But I would actually count it very differently. And as a drummer with odd time signatures, I really try to find out where the anchor points are, and that's what I call my one. So this little post-it here says that I have the verse written out as the following: a bar of 3/4, a bar of 7/4, a bar of 3/4, a bar of 5/4, and then a bar of 4/4. And that sounds like a lot. That's a lot of changes. Now, I will go ahead and gesture along what I mean by that, and you'll see what I mean, where these points are where the one is anchored, in my opinion.
Nothing to do to save his life, call his wife in. Nothing to say but what a day, how's your boy been? Nothing to...
It adds up. I wouldn't lie to you. But yes, very bizarre. And the fact that there are 5 time signature changes within one rendition of a verse is pretty unbelievable. And that's a huge reason as to why this song has stuck out to me as a quirky Beatles song, or one of the quirkier ones. And of course, there are many. So let's keep moving along. We've gotten to the refrain. Here's verse 2.
Going to work, don't wanna go, feeling low down. Headed for home, you start to roam, now you're in town. Everybody knows there's nothing doing, everything is closed, it's like a ruin. Everything you see is half asleep, and you're on your own, you're in the streets.
Awesome, of course. Some more great songwriting. And what has changed from verse 1 to verse 2 is that whereas the brass started and kicked the song off, it was pretty much omitted from verse 1 with the exception of some accented parts right here. When we get to verse 2, it has become a focal point of the rhythm section. We then, of course, introduce a new section to the song, and I'm not even sure what you would call this. It's certainly not the chorus. It could perhaps be seen as a very quick bridge, although it is played twice in the structure, or it could just be whatever Lennon thought should come next to kind of break things up, which is what I would believe. There was an additional sort of trombone part that was added here, which is just kind of keeping the bass running. It sounds like this. Fun. And there you have it. We also have not quite a meter change, but when this section comes in, you can tell that the drums obviously shift to a sort of shuffle with a triplet on the hi-hat. Now, as far as trying to learn everything note for note, I really did want to try to bring across the feel. And I mean this in a complimentary way, but I've always loved how choppy the hi-hats feel like they were played in this. And they add to the intensity of this section. So I really wanted to try to be as authentic as possible in my playing of all the instruments. So let's listen to that quick meter change and how it resets back into the verse.
Headed for home, you start to roam, now you're in town. Everybody knows there's nothing doing, everything is closed, it's like a ruin. Everything you see is half asleep, and you're on your own, you're in the streets.
One thing I haven't pointed out yet, which I found interesting, is that when I learned the parts and started playing them and building the track, it's impressive to me how there's a lot of edge in the way the rhythm track was performed. Because keep in mind, the Beatles would record as a 4-piece, sometimes less, and then start doing all this overdubbing and building up the production of the song. But when we listen to the verse, it's got some real edge to it just between guitar, bass, and drums. Ooh, we're missing a guitar here. Where are you? There you are. Here we go. Really cool. I love those. I was surprised at how kind of jagged and aggressive the guitar playing was. So it was fun to discover that even in a song I've heard 8 million times. And of course, the bass lines in this song are fantastic, as I'm sure you just heard. Now, I'm not referring to my bass playing. I'm referring to McCartney's bass line writing and his bass playing. So there you have it. We find ourselves out of this pre-chorus or quick bridge into another verse, which then takes us into the refrain and a cool guitar solo. So let's listen up through the guitar solo, up until the guitar solo.
After a while you start to smile, now you feel cool. Then you decide to take a walk by the old school. Nothing has changed, it's still the same. I've got nothing to say, but it's okay.
Great solo, and for those of you wondering, that was played by Paul McCartney, which is why it sounds very reminiscent to the sort of psychedelic solo in Taxman, because that was also Paul McCartney. Kind of tricky to learn, because the part of its charm is the timing kind of coming in and out and being sloppy, but in at the same time, and I mean that in the most complimentary of ways. A lot of fun to play. Here's the solo by itself, once again using that Jex Tellis fuzz pedal. Then I like this kind of Jimi Hendrix double track bit right here. A lot of fun to play. Out of this guitar solo, we come into that bridge section, pre-chorus, don't really know what to call it, but where it has that sort of shuffle feel with the very tight triplets on the hi-hat. This is the first time we get a harmony to the lead vocal, because we've had the lead vocal, we've had the good morning backups that come in those chorus refrains. This is the first time we have an actual harmony to the lead vocal, and that continues through. So let's go ahead and listen to this section with that in mind.
People running around, it's 5 o'clock, everywhere in town, it's getting dark, everyone you see is full of life, it's time for tea and meet the wife.
Very fun part to sing because it's highly syncopated, so let's listen to the harmonies by themselves.
People running around, it's 5 o'clock, everywhere in town, it's getting dark, everyone you see is full of life, it's time for tea and meet the wife.
Now that then continues into this final verse. And I actually found this harmony to be kind of peculiar. Could be just me. It flows beautifully, but let's listen to the two vocals together, and then we'll listen to just the harmony by itself, and maybe you'll see what I mean.
Somebody needs to know that I'm glad that I'm here. Watching the skirt, you start to flirt, now you're in gear. Go to a show, you hope she goes. I've got nothing to say, but it's okay.
Interesting. Here's the harmony by itself.
Somebody needs to know that I'm glad that I'm here. Watching the skirt, you start to flirt, now you're in gear. Go to a show, you hope she goes. I've got nothing to say.
Now, if you're picking up on that phasey, flangey quality, I used an ADT plugin, and that was some primitive double tracking technology that was made at EMI, or what is now Abbey Road, and it was pretty much used quite a bit by Lennon because there came a point where he was sick of double tracking. So this is sort of artificial double tracking, automatic double tracking, whatever you want to call it. And basically what it does is it takes a very short delay of the vocal, and that delay is modulated by an LFO at however you like to set it, and it's kind of moving slightly slower, slightly faster, and that gives it a sort of loose double tracking quality, but that's why it sounds very phasey and flangy, because those are time-based effects, and that's what we have here. So ADT by Waves is what was used for all the vocals on the song, but it really seemed to stick out here listening to that a cappella. So out of that section, we then find ourselves in the outro, and that goes like this.
I've got nothing to say, but it's okay.
If you're wondering why it sounds like I'm saying good morning differently towards the end of the song, it's because in listening to the isolated tracks, I realized they were saying Gut Morgen towards the end. So these last four, it's a sort of German. It's grammatically incorrect as far as I know, but still fun nonetheless, and that is why I did that. Now, the reason why it's not as clear on the actual Beatles recording and why it's perhaps too clear here is because I omitted all of the animal sounds that come in because, hey, I'm not going to recreate that, and B, I'm not going to take it from the original and pop it on here because I feel that would just be kind of cheap and a waste of time. But if legend is correct, Lennon apparently wanted animal sounds, and each sound that would come in would be an animal that could devour the one before it. No idea where or why he would have come up with that idea, but a lot of detail nonetheless. So I guess one thing I haven't really taken a dive into here, which is odd to this song, or interesting I should say, is that there's quite a bit of multi-tracking on the drums. and it really comes to play in this sort of chaotic outro, but a lot of the fills are double tracked, and then there's this sort of auxiliary bass drum that comes in from time to time. So here's just a snippet, and you can hear what I'm talking about. There's my homage to Ringo. Love his style, of course. And that is pretty much it, my friends. So that is Good Morning, Good Morning. Like I said at the beginning, if you have not heard the original, please go do that. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Go ahead and stream it. And there should be a link below for the James Coffee Co. site in which we have the Good Morning blend. But David just makes incredible stuff. So go check out his online store. Perhaps get a variety of coffee. You'll be much better off for it. That's it. Go stream Good Morning, Good Morning, and thank you very much. Have a good one.